Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, February 17th. We have a lot to talk about this morning. We have a big impacting type of storm for the next 36 to 48 hours or so over a good part of the eastern half of the nation, anywhere from significant accumulating snow to a severe weather threat on the warm side of a cold frontal system, including the possibility of some isolated tornadoes and certainly high wind a watch in effect for the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. for later tonight, early tomorrow, with the arrival and then the passage of that strong cold frontal system. First, before we get to the current situation, I wanted to take a look ahead to the possibility that winter will linger in the eastern part of the nation as we move into the month of March. There will be a big-time warm-up next week. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, much milder than normal. But that does not look like that will signal the end of winter by any means. And we're going to talk about a couple of things here. First of all, a stratospheric warming event that is going to unfold over the next couple of weeks. That will play a big role in the resurgence of winter for the central and eastern states after next week's break. And we'll take a look at a Pacific Ocean teleconnection index known as the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. First of all, this is a forecast map from yesterday from the GFS model by NOAA for the 10 millibar temperatures 5 days out. This is the early part of next week, a 5-day forecast. And what we're looking at is a kind of a top-down view with the North Pole right in this circle right here. The U.S. is down right in this region over here, and the other side of the pole over here, Asia over here. You notice a kind of a typical polar vortex 5 days out. Again, this is the early part of next week, and you notice the orientation is a little bit maybe north-northeast to south-southwest, and we had this kind of a pattern throughout much of the month of December, where it ended up being cold out in the western U.S. and warm in the eastern U.S. And again, this is a little bit resembling what we had during the month of December, with the orientation a little bit tilted towards the western U.S. In other words, elongated polar vortex stretched out over the western states. And this is what I expect to see maybe during the early and middle part of next week. Colder weather pattern out across the western U.S. and a warmer weather pattern out over the eastern part of the nation. Again, we're talking maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. Let's move ahead, though, and watch what unfolds here at the stratospheric level of 10 millibars. And here it is. This is now 10 days out from yesterday's forecast run by the GFS. So this is kind of a shift in the orientation. Again, here's the North Pole, and notice the polar vortex by this time is kind of oriented more from the northwest to the southeast, and this will bring colder weather to the eastern part of the nation and warmer weather to the western part of the nation. This is kind of what happened early part of January. Following that warm month in the eastern U.S. of December, everything flipped early January, and part of that was related to what was going on at the stratospheric level. So again, this is kind of a signal that next week warm up in the east will only be temporary, and then once this polar vortex becomes elongated and stretched out over the eastern part of the nation, colder weather pattern will emerge. Notice also here a warmer blob of air. This is what we refer to when we talk about stratospheric warming. This is a warmer air mass reaching the upper part of the stratosphere 10 days out. Again, this is a 10-day out forecast. So not only is the polar vortex kind of oriented a little bit differently than 5 days from now, but we start to certainly see a warmer blob of air at the upper part of the atmosphere, the 10 millibar level. That's the stratospheric level. In other words, certainly a healthy looking stratospheric warming event is unfolding. Now, one last plot I want to show here from the GFS model for the 10 millibar temperatures. This is now going out 15 days from yesterday's run, and look what happens here to the polar vortex. It actually splits. And this is what happens sometimes with these stratospheric warming events. Again, the North Pole right in this region right here, the polar vortex tends to become displaced, it tends to split, and all of this leads to the displacement of cold air at the polar latitudes down to the middle latitudes. And this is another reason why I expect a resurgence of winter after next week break in the eastern half of the nation. Again, a warm blob of air here. Again, this is 15 days out. So indeed, we have an unfolding stratospheric warming event that favors the return of cold air outbreaks, making it into the eastern states after next week, maybe as early as the latter part of next week. And that is likely to continue into the month of March. Well, it's not just stratospheric warming that leads me to believe we'll have a resurgence of winter after next week's break in the eastern part of the nation. Here's a teleconnection index that is quite useful this time of the year. It's called the EPO, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. What goes on in the Pacific Ocean, of course, has a major impact on the central states, the eastern states, and of course the western part of the nation. This is going forward in time, the prediction by the extended run of NOAA's GFS model, and anything below this neutral line right here is considered in negative territory. And when the EPO is in negative territory combined with the Western Pacific Oscillation, the WPO, that tends to favor an overall weather pattern that allows for the movement of cold air masses from northwestern Canada and Alaska all the way down into the central and eastern states. Indeed, after a kind of a flirtation with the neutral line here over the next few days, and again we have a warm up in the eastern states early to middle next week, it drops back down into negative territory and kind of stays here. Looking at this green, which is the mean run here, this is kind of more important to me, the mean run. This green line right here represents the EPO going forward in time all the way out to the middle part of March. This is the beginning of March. This is all the way out to the middle part of March. So this, combined with the WPO trending into negative territory, and combined with the what's going on at the stratospheric level, definitely suggests to me that despite a significant warm-up next week in the eastern states, let's say Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday time frame, definitely more winter is on the way during the latter part of the month of February and going into March, and perhaps even well into the month of March. So I just wanted to point out what's a look ahead here to the latter part of February into March. Well, now let's focus in on the CONUS and the next 24 to 48 hours. We have a major impacting type of storm associated cold frontal system that will produce anything from significant accumulating snow to the possibility of severe weather later today, including the possibility of tornadoes, and then high wind watch in effect later tonight into tomorrow morning across the mid-Atlantic and the northeast U.S. First of all, this is a weather warnings map put out by NOAA. Lots of colors, meaning lots of impact by this particular storm system. This whole region right here that I'm circling right now is where there can be some significant snowfall over the next 48 hours. This will include some of the Midwestern cities like St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, right in this region right here with some substantial snow accumulations. Meanwhile, the brown here represents high wind possibilities, and that will extend all the way into the Mid-Atlantic region overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning and across the northeastern U.S. That is associated with the movement of a strong cold front at the surface levels, and we'll see in a moment very, very powerful low-level jet. That's the main cause of concern for potentially damaging wind gusts all along this frontal system. Also, a severe weather threat right in this region right here for the later today into tonight. That includes the possibility of isolated tornadoes. And let's get a little bit more fine-tuned with respect to that severe weather threat. It really is enhanced in the region from around Nashville, Tennessee, all the way to Huntsville, Alabama, right in here, an enhanced severe weather threat later today into tonight. That does include, unfortunately, the possibility of isolated tornadoes. So you had significant accumulating snow out across the Midwest into this part of southeastern Canada over the next 24, 48 hours or so, and in the warm sector, an enhanced threat for severe weather later today and tonight. And that severe weather threat really extends all the way to the mid-Atlantic coastline by later tonight into tomorrow morning. Certainly can be some strong thunderstorms all the way into the I-95 corridor region later tonight into the early part of tomorrow. But certainly stay tuned to local weather in this particular part of the nation later today and tonight for the possibility of severe thunderstorms and isolated tornadoes. Now let's take a look at last night's NAM model run, the NAM model from 6Z. I want to first start off with the low-level jet. This is a few thousand feet off the surface, 850 millibar level, and all of this represents very, very strong winds in the lower part of the atmosphere, not at the surface, but not far above the surface. And watch what happens beginning with Thursday morning as we progress into the later part of the day and into the overnight hours. We're moving along in hourly increments here, and notice some strengthening of that low-level jet by the time we get into the overnight hours, and especially by tomorrow morning. You see some whites showing up here. This is 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, and this is the real cause for concern in the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., especially along coastal sections, all the way from Virginia to Maine. Very, very powerful winds in the lower part of the atmosphere. Doesn't take all that much to mix that kind of energy, that kind of wind speed from a few thousand feet above down to the surface level. That is the concern for late tonight and tomorrow morning. A thunderstorm, for example, could certainly cause some mixing in the atmosphere and produce enough mixing to put those low-level wind gusts all the way down at the surface level. And that's one of the things we'll watch for as the frontal system arrives in the I-95 corridor region late tonight, early tomorrow morning. Let's go out a few more hours, and this is the forecast map for 7 a.m. By this time, the main threat area looks like coastal regions, again, all the way from Virginia up to Maine. So this low-level jet is of real concern. And notice upstream here, this is the Friday morning forecast map. We have another very powerful system aloft that drops southeastward on Saturday, comes into the northeastern part of the nation, and it will produce some very windy conditions, 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts or more, and perhaps some isolated snow showers and even some snow squalls later Saturday into Saturday evening. Again, another potent system will cause some very windy conditions on Saturday. Well, let's walk through the vorticity field as depicted by last night's 6Z run of the NAM model. Starting off the day without any precipitation, without any rainfall in the mid-Atlantic region. That generally looks like it'll hold off till the evening hours, and any shower later tonight into tomorrow morning can be briefly heavy, and there certainly can be a strong thunderstorm as well. Here is a vigorous wave of energy as we begin the day here out in the south central part of the nation. That will contribute to a lot of upward motion here in the lower Mississippi Valley and the Tennessee Valley. That's your region of potential severe weather, including isolated tornadoes. Let's move forward here. Lots of upward motion right in this region here in the warm sector as we go through the day today. And here we are now into the early evening hours. All this associated with that strong low pressure area, severe weather threat on the warm side of that frontal system, and accumulating snow across the Midwest, really from an area from Kansas all the way to Michigan, and then overnight tonight into the day on Friday. That significant snow area will extend to southeastern Canada. Now here we go into the wee hours of the morning. Here's 1 a.m. forecast map. That surface front will be crossing through Pennsylvania at this time. It looks like it'll cross over the I-95 corridor region late tonight, early tomorrow morning. And the time period of biggest concern, in my opinion, is right around the arrival of that frontal system late tonight, early tomorrow morning in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. In the hour or two following that passage of the surface cold front, the pressure will surge. There will be strong rises in pressure, and the winds will shift from the southwest to west to northwest direction. That hour or two immediately behind the passage of the frontal system is when there could be enough mixing in the atmosphere to produce some damaging wind gusts. Again, we're talking the wee hours of the morning all the way to 7, 8, 9 a.m. D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. That front clears the coast by mid to late morning on Friday. Temperatures drop throughout the day on Friday, and it gets quite cold tomorrow night. And here we are into Saturday morning, and look at this. Another very vigorous wave of energy in the upper part of the atmosphere could cause 40-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts later Saturday into Saturday evening. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and that follows possible 50 to 60 mile-per-hour wind gusts later tonight into tomorrow morning. So another vigorous system to watch right on the heels of the system later today and tonight. Could also be some isolated snow squalls associated with that wave of energy in the upper part of the atmosphere on Saturday into Saturday evening. Well, let's now wrap up with the surface forecast maps of the NAM model run from 6E. Notice, first of all, these black lines represent lines of equal pressure. They're known as isobars. The tighter those lines, the stronger the winds. Winds are flowing in this direction ahead of that strong front, southwesterly flow of air. That is pushing much milder air into the eastern seaboard area, into the mid-Atlantic region. And then as we move forward on an hourly basis here, the rain again holds off in the D.C. to New York City corridor until the evening hours for the most part, but significant accumulating snow in the cold sector, parts of the Midwest from Kansas to Michigan later today into tonight. Watch out for a squall line here later today into early tonight, especially with a severe weather threat across the Tennessee Valley, lower Mississippi Valley, places like Nashville, Tennessee, Huntsville, Alabama, in the line here of severe thunderstorm activity and isolated tornadoes on the table as well. Then we get into the overnight hours, the wee hours of the morning, 1 a.m. forecast map. Here is the location of that surface front at about 1 a.m. It looks like it comes through the I-95 corridor region of D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City, anytime from about 3 a.m. to about 9 a.m. Could have a strong thunderstorm with that arrival of the front, and watch out for potential damaging wind gusts, especially in that hour or two immediately behind the passage of the front. And you'll know when it passes because the winds will shift to the northwest. Your barograph will show a surge in pressure. Pressures will rise dramatically, and temperatures will fall during the day on Friday following that frontal passage after the early morning high temperatures that will be reached. And then it gets quite cold tomorrow night, and we'll move forward here into the day on Saturday. And look at this system here by Saturday morning. Again, this surface low pressure area is supported by very strong energy in the upper part of the atmosphere. Watch for winds to pick up quite noticeably on Saturday, reaching 40-plus miles an hour or so in the mid-Atlantic, in the northeast U.S. There will be scattered snow showers and isolated snow squalls as well, perhaps making their way all the way into the eastern part of Pennsylvania later Saturday into Saturday evening. So a lot going on. Longer term, we have a break in the temperature pattern here with mild conditions for the eastern U.S. next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but that is not the end of winter. The stratospheric warming event that is unfolding, as well as some of these Pacific Ocean teleconnection indices, all suggest winter will make a strong resurgence later February into the month of March. By the way, I have a much more detailed article about a look ahead to the resurgence of winter right now on the arcfieldweather.com website. And watch out today, tonight, tomorrow. High winds throughout much of the eastern half of the nation, significant snow in portions, and a severe weather threat in other portions. Stay tuned for updates later today at arcfieldweather.com. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.